Well, welcome back to the Great Mates podcast. If this is your first time listening to us, we are a bunch of young strands who talk about our lives here in Australia and pop culture on the internet. I'm Josh, and with me tonight is the other STEM boy, Nick.
STEMmy as always.
Ah, so many stems. So much stems. Forever stems. I don't know. Anyway, it's just the two of us, so we don't have anything STEMmy planned, I think. Everyone else is in crunch time with assessment, so yeah, it's gonna be the two of us. And I don't know, where should we start, Nick? Should I start with my little rant for a hot minute?
Yeah, start with your little rant.
Sure. So MasterChef Australia is back for another season, and I didn't realize I would get so salty so quickly. It's only, so as we're recording this, we're just starting the second week of the season. And, you know, just affluent white people trying to flex their family's socioeconomic status and saying that, you know, they've got 2 degrees and they deferred their honours in psychology to go on MasterChef. And the main reason is, you know, apart from liking the food, it's like they didn't want to do their masters for the sake of doing it. So I got real pissy, because, you know, I don't need the flex, and it's just, you know, fuck that shit. And a lot of people on the live tweeting community obviously agree, because, you know, why even bring that up? It doesn't make you look any, your image is not going to get any better just because you said that. In fact, it's actually going to make it a lot worse. So there's that. And Nick obviously mutes MasterChef because he doesn't need that in his life.
Oh, I mean, I can deal with it. I can deal with a bit, but last season you got quite salty about various things, quite on brand.
Yes,
and also just other people. Like I watched the first couple of seasons when it was actually like fun and people trying to live out their dreams, and now it's just people being salty and just hosts punching people out at the soccer, and it's just lost its charm.
Yeah, you could say that. After 11 years, it's gotten real tired. And if any indication of me like bringing out the salt and the fire, the second week we're back in the new season is any indication, it's time for a change, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm hoping that happens real soon, because if it continues to go this way, I'm probably not going to be watching the rest of this season. I have better things to do, like continue investing in Netflix content. So yeah, there we go. I have nothing else to say on that apart from just don't flex that shit if you come from a position of privilege, and try and work it as some sort of emotional side story, because yeah, I'm not buying it, and I'm pretty sure the rest of the online Twitter people are not going to be buying it either. So there we go. Now that my rant's over, what are we going to talk about this week?
Well, I was just looking through some stuff, and as of recording, to tie into last week's spoiler for days, Avengers is being reported to have grossed $2.2 billion, officially surpassing Titanic, and is the second highest grossing film of all time now.
Okay.
And it's been out for 2 weeks.
That's interesting.
It has to do another 600 million to surpass Avatar.
Okay.
So maybe,
I don't know.
yeah, it's hard
It's
to
interesting
say.
because you have to adjust for stuff like inflation, right? So
Yes, this is without inflation. I bet with inflation, it's probably, when was Avatar? It was like
Avatar,
2011, I think.
no, Avatar was 2009. Avatar is 10 years
2009.
old.
So 10 years of inflation, probably not quite enough to bring.
Not even okay, so I'm looking up the wiki for this, and in 2017 dollars, Titanic made 3.08 billion. Avatar made 3.25 billion, and Gone with the Wind adjusted made 3.7. So
Yeah, but there was nothing else on it at that time. It was like you watched Gone at the Wind or you watched a tumbleweed.
that's true. To be fair, that film is now 80 years old. So, but still, that is a pretty amazing feat for for Endgame. Like in
Yeah.
the span of
But,
2
I
weeks. So.
mean, people were super hyped for this film.
That
And
is
like I
true.
said last week, this is the first film I like voluntarily saw a second time.
Hmm.
And it's a film I'm still thinking about. And the last time I saw her, it was like a week and a half ago.
Hmm.
And I'm still like, fuck, that was a good film.
Hmm.
And like I've listened to podcasts about it, and people are poking holes in it. I'm like, I see your holes, but also, fucking Cap has the hammer.
That's true.
Like, as I was trying to not say too much last week,
Hmm.
as a comic book fan, that film was like everything I could ever wish for from a movie.
I like after talking about it with some people, it's like for me, my overall impression of it is still like it's a pretty good ending, honestly, for a lot of the characters that we've grown up with. So I'm happy about it. I mean, compared to other stuff that's gonna be out there, I don't know. I'm still like, it's decent, but I don't know if I would consider it the best. But that is again just me, and I have not invested a lot of money into watching the MCU in its entirety. So there's that.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I get people. Like I said, I devote a lot of money. One to get, like, I'm not even that much of a Marvel reader. I have to say, but I still keep on I keep on top of not all the ongoing stuff that's happening, but like most of the big events. And I think I could, like, if there was a I've gone to superhero trivia before, but I can like stand up to the best of them in my knowledge of stuff, and I know the vibe of the characters, and I was a big defender of the Cap Hydra situation from last year or the year before. So, but yeah, I also get people being like, it was good, but not either not understanding stuff, or like a friend of mine like loves to read comic books, but she hasn't seen any of the movies really, and she was like, I haven't even seen Infinity War. And I was like, then do not even bother about Endgame. Just wait, watch the other stuff, because you are not going to, like, she'll know the characters, and she will get all the, and she would understand it, but I'm like, you're not going to have the same enjoyment, and it's not going to have the same impact as everything.
Yeah.
Also on Avengers from this week, there was the stupidly looked into "I love you 3000" line.
Oh
Like
yes, I
that
saw that.
that over over analyzing is one of the things I hate the most about the nerd community.
Uh-huh.
Because it doesn't even make any sense to begin with. So, for those that don't know, people were saying I Love You 3000 comes from the MCU, including Far From Home.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, including Far From Home having a total runtime of 3,000 minutes. Now, for that to make sense, one, Far From Home has to go for 121 minutes. That hasn't even been announced yet. So first people were grasping at straws to come up with absolutely nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And then the real meaning behind the line came out, and it's a lot better than that. It's what Robert Downey Jr.'s kids say to him and he says to them. That's just cool and cute, and what's not to like about that? A bit of like a personal parental touch to a movie, and like that's the type of stuff I like in these larger film universes, like a bit of personality.
Yeah. It is very interesting to see, especially I know with the Marvel Cinematic Universe fans try to impart meaning on some things, especially like things like this, like the I Love You 3000. And to see where that comes from, it's just sometimes they just need to take a step back and not read into it too much. I really wish they could, but you know.
Yeah, you can, like, I've got no issues with people analyzing stuff or looking into stuff, like Morgan being like, I like cheeseburgers.
Mm-hmm.
After, like, that's the first thing Tony has when he arrives back in America in Iron Man. Mm-hmm. Or his final lines being, I am Iron Man, which are his final scenes of the first Iron Man movie.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine stuff. You can read into that as much as... Well, not even reading into it, but you can analyse that as much as you want.
Mm-hmm.
But don't grasp at bullshit straws that don't even exist.
In other movie news, so between the last episode and today's episode, we got the trailer for... Is it the extended trailer for the Sonic film that came out during this time?
Yeah, it came out just after we recorded last week. And
boy,
I haven't even watched the whole thing.
Mate, you don't even need to watch the whole thing to understand it's a hot mess.
First there's Jim Carrey, who I just do not enjoy anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got the fucking stupid eyes and the human teeth
and the legs
and the annoying attitude. Like, Sonic's always been an annoying little twat.
Mm-hmm.
But this Sonic is just so much worse.
Oh dear. And then we got the news that they would be Sega and is it Paramount?
Yeah, Paramount.
Publishing? Yeah. Are going to do a major redesign. But obviously...
Oh, no. It's Paramount. So going along the lines of Star Trek, it's going to be a minor refit.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
I just love calling everything minor refits because... Oh, Star Trek, you're hilarious.
Oh, dear. What was the minor refit on Star Trek, though? Hang on.
So, like, anytime anything happens to any ship, they're like, oh, the ship had a minor refit. Yet they'd be like, we've installed 120 extra guest quarters, and that's a minor refit. Okay. I'm like, no, that's a pretty big... Or, we've changed the warp drive. I'm like, to do that, you have to deconstruct the ship because the warp drive takes up, like, the entirety... Like, it goes from the bottom to the top of the secondary hull. Like, that is not possible to minor refit.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, so in Star Trek, everything's called a minor refit. So the
Okay.
joke is
Okay.
anything big happens, it's a minor refit.
Uh-huh.
So yes, they're
Uh-huh.
doing minor retouches to the Sonic the Hedgehog movie, and it's not going to change my mind.
Mm-hmm.
One, I'm already not a big fan of Sonic.
Mm-hmm.
I remember watching I believe it was called Sonic X in like the early to mid noughties, was a cartoon that was like pretty cool and like kind of dark and gritty, but had cool animation in that. And I've played some Sonic games, and I mean, it doesn't help that one of the Sonic games I played was Sonic 06, but yeah, just they don't quite do it for me.
Mm-hmm.
But at least Sonic 06 isn't the worst Sonic product to come out now.
Oh dear. Fair enough.
Especially like when you compare this trailer to Detective Pikachu,
Detective Pikachu is like a fucking blessing now.
which is Deadpool for children. But
What's the rating for Detective Pikachu?
it's got to be PG because
You
there's going to be
sure?
violence.
Are
They were
you
advertised.
sure?
It has to be at least PG.
Hang on, let me take a
Like it's got to be like because it can't be G because there's going to be violence, and
Oh,
it
no,
can't
no,
be
no.
M, and it can't be M because you've got a child audience that's going to want to eat that stuff up.
Mm-hmm.
So it's got to be PG.
Okay, hang on. Is it the American rating system that it's got? Yeah, while I have a look for the ratings, with the minor retouchings, for Sonic, I was really hoping that they would at least delay the premiere, but after a
Apparently
week, it
not.
seems like they're not going to do that, and that's gonna suck balls.
I also saw a thing on the internet where people were like, support this film now. Like, think of all the animators that have to do all this extra work. I'm like, yeah, but I'm not supporting stuff because of the animators. The problem with Sonic 06 is not the animators or the game designers or the what story. It's just that they just don't work together. The animation looks fine. The story is probably fine. But when you add everything together and add in the Sonic IP, which has some... like, it comes with a fan base and some connotations to it, it's not going to be... it's not going to be enjoyable. When you look at, like, all the terrible YA movies we had come out over the last, like, 5 to 8 years, the reason they're bad is because the fans came in with pre-existing ideas of what would happen. I still hate Catching Fire because it doesn't carry through the one trope throughout the entire Hunger Games series, particularly in that second book, which is bread. There is no bread. And I'm like, but that's how the plot of that book works. The plot works because they get married by toasting bread, and then they drop the bread that helps the people understand where to go and when the revolution is going to start and where it's going to start. So, yeah, it's going to be bad. Not because of the animators. It's plus they're going to get paid. Like, I'm not going to feel bad for someone getting paid.
I mean, the thing is, people have brought up, is the crunch going to be
Ethical.
like, yeah, and that's the real gray area of this. Is like, we understand that the concept of the crunch time really impacts people's quality of life. And
there was that
all
whole thing
sort
that
of stuff as
came
well.
out. There was that whole thing that came out about Red Dead Redemption 2, where one of the head devs was like, it came out they were doing like 80-hour. No, what was it? Because
80 or 100-hour.
Yeah, they were like doing
weeks,
really
right?
long weeks, and everyone was like, "Oh, I feel sorry for it." But it was only like the main 12 people that were doing it, and it was only for like 2 weeks, and that was all voluntary, and they got paid. But also, as Funhouse talked about, like, you kind of know when you're going into something. You know about crunch time. You know, as a game gets closer, you may be working harder to make sure it gets published on time. And the same probably happens with the film industry. You know when your special effects are due. So when it comes closer to a deadline, it's like when you're writing an essay. Like, you know when that essay is due, and you're still going to be working on it. Even if you say you finished it, 2 weeks in advance, you're still probably going to go, oh, maybe I can fix this or I can fix that. And most of the time you get to an hour before it's due and you're like, oh, fuck, and you're crunching.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the animators for Sonic, like, they know about crunch time, and especially with these types of movies, like, that trailer is probably all the special effects they had. They're probably still working on the special effects. So honestly, it's probably not that much added work. Like, it's going to be a lot of added work, definitely, but it's not like they're having to redo an entire 2-hour film.
Mm-hmm.
But at least the fans can come out and go, look at what you could just do and it'd be 1,000 times better. Where you're like, just put the eyes touching and make them big, and
fix those legs,
and fix the legs, and fix the teeth. And
the human teeth was disturbing.
Oh, the worst one is when they put the human teeth into his eyes.
What?
Yeah.
Who photoshopped that? God.
The internet, but because
it's the internet.
I have weird tastes when it comes to stuff, I see a lot of terrible teeth memes.
I don't even want to know. Okay, so Detective Pikachu is going to be PG in both the US and Australia. Okay. That'll be real interesting to see what happens. Anyway, are you gonna watch Detective Pikachu?
I don't know. Probably. I'll watch it eventually.
But maybe not the premiere.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. I don't know. Maybe I might use a freebie and go watch it next week. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, freebie doesn't sound that bad.
Fingers crossed, though. But yeah. Okay. So there's an article that I dropped in our link dump just a few minutes before we started about officially, canonically, Uno, or Mattel, who created Uno, says that you're actually not allowed to stack draw 2 and draw 4s. Even though I'm sure a lot of people would have had house rules saying that you can stack draw 2s and draw 4s. I've done that before, and I have seen the joy in my face when I was able to say, draw 18, yeah, bitch. To real close friends of mine. That's why we don't play Uno as much anymore. But yeah, Nick, from what I've gathered, you love rules and therefore don't agree with the whole stackable.
I'm cool if you have rules that are set forward and are continually used.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there are games where, like, we'll play the game the first time and we're like, oh, this is terrible, let's just do it this way, and it either makes it quicker or makes it easier, and I'm like, cool, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But as long as everyone agrees on the rules, before, after, whatever. Like, yeah, as long as everyone agrees on the rules before the game is started or midway through the first playing it, you're like, cool, let's change this. I'm okay with that. But then you've got to stick to those rules.
Mm-hmm.
So it's also why I don't play Uno, because everyone has different rules.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah. Yeah, so you're actually... What did they actually say? Hang on, I can't...
I remember reading an article that was like all the misconceptions about the rules. But yeah, the big one is that +4s don't stack and should never stack. Also, one of the other big ones is that you can finish on a action card.
You can?
You can
Or is
finish
that-
on an action card.
Oh.
A lot of people say you can't finish on an action card.
Okay.
I can't remember what they said about wilds, though. I don't think you can finish on wild. And you can use a wild, like a normal wild, to call any colour, even if you have that colour in your hand.
Uh-huh.
But I think 4s you can't.
Man, it's been so long since I've played Uno.
Yeah.
Mainly because of this reason. It's like Monopoly. You don't play those games with friends.
Also, Monopoly never ends. No one... Like, Monopoly is a game where you're putting down, like, 8 to 12 hours.
No! But...
My brother and I had a Monopoly game that lasted, like, an entire long weekend.
What? But isn't the whole object of the game to buy out every other player?
The object of the game was as a criticism for monopolies.
Yes, I know that. I know it's historical. Applications is actually supposed to be a critique on capitalism and...
Yeah, it's a parody that it takes so long to go nowhere.
Sweet Jesus.
Just play poker instead. Poker's quicker and the rules are set out pretty straightforward.
I should get into playing Mahjong, honestly. I
See,
really need to put...
The Asians have Mahjong, the Dutch have Rummy Cub. Like, Rummy Cub was a game where, like, my Oma taught me it when I was, like, 5 or 6.
Uh-huh.
But then also, when I was like 10 or 12, my mum taught me euchre. So, I'm a pretty decent shark when it comes to those two.
Uh-huh.
I can swindle ya.
Even when we all meet up, we are, and I'm sure the listeners will already know, we have plans. Potential plans. We are either all going Korean barbecue, or we are all playing, I believe, Mario parties in there somewhere, and potentially.
I don't think Mario Party is a good idea, because Mario Party is literally the game that ends friendships.
Well, it almost ended. Remember, Ben, Olivia, and Brandon played it when Ben was in Adelaide, and let's never forget the buffalo sauce on the blanket.
That trip was doomed for Benaya. That was also when Benaya threw out his wallet.
His wallet in a bin. Jesus Christ. That was an adventure to like not even be directly a part of, just to see it unfold through Messenger was an adventure in and of itself. Oh yeah, that too. Yeah, that was. Oh dear me. But yeah. And yeah, but anyway, we might be playing Mahjong, who knows? And obviously record podcasts in person. Yeah. So, this is going to be a real short episode anyway, guys, so don't worry. I think we'll answer a question that we've yet to answer. So if you guys want to send us questions, feel free to do so. Send them to us on Twitter, or slide into our DMs on Instagram, and leave us those questions. Brandon's left us a question from the bulk of questions he left us a few weeks ago, that also contained the unicorn mirror. So the question I'll pose tonight on this episode is, how do you think national museums should strike the balance between public access and commercial reuse of digital content? I would say that given my experience in research and whatnot, and having gone through the process of advocating for open access and that sort of stuff, I would say that national museums, given their status as a national museum, should really be advocating for stuff like open access, and the digitization of media and whatnot. So that's sort of where I stand in terms of how it can be applied and those sorts of things. So.
I mean, you can run it very much the same as how journals are run. I mean, a lot of museums run journals anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Where because you still financially need to have record keepers and have the space to keep records and all that. So you definitely need to charge.
Yeah. I guess it's more of a question of who do you charge to continue as an institution, as it were.
Even if you look at it very much how zoos work, like zoos were originally just rich people being like, look at all these stupid animals I have. And then it moved into conservation.
Mm-hmm.
Where museums also started as rich people being like, look at all this cool shit I have.
Mm-hmm.
But it now does need to move into the conservation of culture and history and all that, which I mean, they already do. Where you need to keep... Like, kids go to the zoo to be like, look at all this cool animals still.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to run museums in such a way where... Because the consumers are where you're going to get most of your money from. So I think it's about putting on a show for them. So having pretty things where you can charge people and get a lot of your money to then subsidize the archival of the rest of stuff. I mean, government should also probably assist in the costs of archival.
Mm-hmm.
Like, kind of one of the things that jumps out to me the most about, like, when I think about this is when I was in year 11 and we went to the Sydney Jewish Museum. And they had like a Holocaust survivor that spoke to us, and I mean, for one, that was a life-changing experience.
Mm-hmm.
But like, that was all you could see. Like, where this was hosted, it was hosted behind the scenes at the museum, so you could see all the archives they had of people's stories and well, they're not artifacts really, but like display items of like the shoes of people who had died due to the Holocaust, but you could see how that was all done. But then after that was all after we had this talk and asked questions, all that, we could then go through the museum freely, and then you saw how pretty. Well, I mean, talking about the Sydney Jewish Museum, which mostly there's a lot of Holocaust stuff there. Calling it pretty is probably not the best choice of words, but how they tell stories in a very visual way. Or when I went to the Australian War Memorial, the same thing where they tell a story where you're captivated, but I think you need to acknowledge that these places are like their number one priority is not the consumer. Their number one priority is archival and preserving and all that. So, yeah, I think governments need to step up a bit, but also they need to... Like, I would be fine if you just charged universities or whatever a small fee to kind of keep that thing going, but very tokenistic in how it was done.
Yeah, potentially.
I mean, it is a hard question.
Yeah,
but
and really like moving into a this area of like digital conservation takes a lot of money to transfer all
well,
of
the
that.
thing, it's money to transfer, but it's a lot less to
maintain and
to maintain and have access to. But at the same time, there's not like you still need the originals.
Yeah,
like it would be a terrible world when everything is digital.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's a toughie. And I guess more so when we start entering, especially when it comes to artifacts of culture and navigating that space where, you know, I can't remember what article I saw, pulled it off The Guardian or somewhere. The returning of indigenous artifacts as well, and the arguments for and against the returning of remains to the indigenous peoples.
Plus there's the forever ongoing debate between the British Museum and Egypt.
Oh yes,
that
is the other big grey area, is like, where do museums stand on returning artifacts that were effectively stolen or knowingly manipulated from the hands of indigenous peoples?
I mean, like, especially with Egypt, the correct answer, in my opinion, is you help set up acceptable venues and archives in Egypt and then return stuff that way to Egypt. But you're like, you have to be taking care of this stuff. You cannot let this stuff die.
Yeah. Yeah.
But at the same time, like and I know this happened a bit in Egypt and around the Middle East, where there is unfortunate war going on, but there is a lot of destruction of museums and holy sites and historic and sites of historical significance. So that's the thing where it's like, if I give it back to you, but then ISIL attack and it gets destroyed, I don't know how we would like that. So yeah, it is a very grey area.
Yeah, and it's something that I am sort of, again, it is trying to acknowledge that, you know, we need to, in some aspects, do need to return these things, but it's also obviously, as you know, a museum's main mission is to preserve history, to inform us now. So yeah, it's just so, it's just a very delicate area to be working in. Yeah, I don't know, something to think about. Um, and I'm sure we're more than happy to help continue that conversation
Oh
on
yeah,
social. So yeah.
yeah. It also worries me when I see like kids nowadays where their attention spans are so um shortened isn't the right word, but when they're so distractible is really
Mm-hmm.
it. Where like I think about all the powerful experiences I've had at the Australian War Memorial and the Sydney Jewish Museum, where you just kind of have to stop, take a step back, and kind of analyze what you're going through. Or when I go to Science Works in Melbourne or whatever, and as a STEM boy, understanding how stuff works or why concepts matter, and then I see, like, I worry that stuff like that could die. And like I'm very honoured to be probably the last generation who can actually interact with a Holocaust survivor and interact with World War II survivors, and probably not World War One. They're mostly all gone.
Yeah.
There are a few very very young nurses left, I believe, that are like pretty fucking old.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and like I said, being the last generation who talked to Holocaust survivors, then it's important to archive their experiences
Mm.
because that's important. I mean, also it'd be good to, send some of those experiences to the neo-Nazis. Let them be like,
Oh yeah.
you want to go back here? Because this is what could happen if you want to go back there.
Mm. Yeah, I sort of take the position of we really, there is a place to continue to preserve stories because we need to learn from them and make sure we don't fuck it up the next time. Unfortunately, it is quite sad to see that history loves to repeat itself.
Oh, also when we're killing ourselves.
Yeah, that's true.
Like I was trying to, before we started recording, I was trying to find some science stories, and a lot of them are just like, we are fucked. The Earth is in an unrepairable state. We cannot change the damage we've already done to the Earth due to climate change. And I'm like, well, aren't we a great race? Aren't we a great animal? We just kill our planet because you know what? We like it. Also, I acknowledge that it's not us killing it; it's the rich people who really like oil that are killing it mainly.
Dear.
Classic. Let's just ban straws because that's the big problem.
Oh my god. Let's also forget that people who require bendy straws actually need them because they have different accessibility requirements. But
Oh, I brought that up to someone and they were like, they should just have their own straws. I'm like, well, one, that is unhygienic.
Mm-hmm.
Also, you've got to remember to carry the straws. Also, it's not that hard to just have straws. And paper straws suck.
Yeah, they do.
And I mean, it's the same going on seeing. This is a classic touch point of this podcast, and seeing we have an election in about 2 weeks is this idea of Labor trying to tax big business and Liberals being like, they're going to take money from elsewhere and blah, blah, blah. And
Oh, God.
I was talking to my mother about it, and she was playing devil's advocate in, if you tax these people, their business is going to go away. I'm like, yeah, but also you could pay for a lot of things if you just taxed them. And if they don't want to be here, they can fuck off. Like, because they're still going to have to pay the taxes to sell the iPhones in Australia or to sell Samsungs in Australia. There's taxes still have to be paid. So really, it's the consumer. And then people say, oh, it'll be transferred onto the consumer. But at the same time, if they want a cheap phone, just get a cheap Chinese phone.
Yeah.
So I get where they're coming from, but also just stop paying like 0.5% of the tax you deserve that you need to pay. Just thank you. That could be all the healthcare, and
that can be so many subsidies for healthcare,
and education, and
yes,
everything.
Also provision of mental health in a lot of disadvantaged communities.
Oh yeah, there's one ad going on at the moment about Aboriginal children are 5 times more likely to die than white kids. I'm like, yeah, that's sad, but also it's because they're in rural communities, and rural communities have lesser access to health, and there's also a ongoing stigma that is attached to it, where there's a lot of drug abuse, and communities that don't support mental health, and like this isn't an issue that can be boiled down to Indigenous kids are 5 times more likely to die than white kids. There is a bigger problem here, but
there is a lot of systemic stuff going on.
It's also an election, and catchphrases are what sell. Like I said in chat this evening, like I'm worried with the Liberal ads because they are really good at slandering Labor, and that could get and I really don't want another 4 years of a Liberal government.
God. Well, I've already voted anyway, so there's no point.
Yeah, I should probably pre-vote, because either I'm going to play D&D that day, or I'm going to go to my brother's housemate's engagement party.
Yeah, I'm just like, and I've talked with a few people as well. It's like a lot of the younger generation have started voting a lot earlier. It's just
they were talking about why, like, in the first week they had more, and the first day they had more pre-voting than they had for like the entirety of the last election, or there was some crazy statistic like that, and they were like, why? And a lot of people were just like, one, people have already made the decision.
Yeah.
And 2, they want their weekends to themselves, or like there's a lot of factors. But mainly it's like people have
already made their mind up.
People have already made up their mind, and I mean, it doesn't matter. Just at least we let everyone vote, unlike other countries.
Yeah, that is.
And we have our elections on the weekend, not on Thursdays
or Mondays.
Or any
or
day.
Tuesdays.
Or any weekday.
God.
I saw that with the recent UK local elections.
Oof.
That a weekday, and then the fucking statistics that came out of it, that was like 1,000 seats were lost from the Tories. Where it's like, I mean, there's thousands of seats because this is local elections.
Yeah.
So it's all the tiny town boards and whatever. But yeah, a big swing to the
minor parties.
Well, because the UK they have first past the post voting, so you have a lot of minor parties where a lot of people, and Brexit's done this, where a lot of people are voting for the parties that are like, let's just not do Brexit and let's just decide to do it right now. Let's not fuck around with it any longer. And there was the whole anti-Semitism that was happening in the UK Labour Party that I tried to research, but it seemed to be like a thing of 5 years of small remarks. I'm like, I don't have time to read through 5 years of small remarks.
God.
But yeah, it sounded very much the same as how all these tweets have come out about Australian politicians, where they've been like, anti-Semitic, anti-Islamic, homophobic, rape jokes.
Oof. this election period has been wild, to say the least, to say the very least.
It's felt as short as it is, and so long.
Dear me. But yeah. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens on the 18th. We should start wrapping up, I think, with recommendations. So, recommendations are something that we're introducing this season in the outros, where we just recommend, maybe one thing, TV, show, movie, an artist, someone that you follow on YouTube. Have a listen to our previous episodes from this season to, find our recommendations. I'll go first this week. You can find me basically everywhere as a Bang Pinoy. And this week I am going to recommend a film that is currently, as of today, available on Netflix. It's called Other People. I'll probably say the blurb that's here. So, after a bad breakup, a struggling New York comedy writer tries to don a brave face and care for his dying mother in Sacramento. So, prepare to cry quite a lot. But it is also a dramedy, so just be prepared for that. It's really good, and is one of the things I have recommended to other people in the past. So you guys are going to get it from me as my recommendation this week. Nick, where can people find you and recommendation?
People can find me at Nick Landkroon, NickLandkroon, on Instagram and Twitter. Twitter is where I'm most active, to be honest. And yeah, I tweet random things. My recommendation for this week, I don't believe I recommended this yet, but seeing I talked about Star Trek, it is going to be The Orville. It is a comedic Star Trek created by Seth MacFarlane of Family Guy American Dad fame. So it is, but it is not as lowbrow as those. I mean, it's very lowbrow, but it's also like all the funny parts of Star Trek. If that was just the episode. So there's like one episode about a character that creates a sex program for the holodeck, but it also touches on big issues like same-sex relationships and transgender and racism and all the usual Star Trek, the usual Star Trek. Let's touch on the happening issues of the day. The Orville.
So I have a feeling you mentioned the Orville on the.
I've probably mentioned it before because it has a lot of. Like, I'm enjoying it a lot more than I am Discovery. Discovery's a hot fire at the moment.
Oh boy. But yeah. Also, for those of you who may not have realized, we released a very special Avengers Endgame spoilercast on Spoilers for Days. So it didn't appear here because we've effectively spun off Spoilers for Days as a separate series. So you can go find that special episode that dropped last week basically everywhere, on iTunes, Spotify. Search Spoilers for Days and you should be able to find the cover art. And it's also published through Great Mates. So there's that. If you liked this week's episode, definitely give us a rating and review on iTunes, leave us 5 stars, and tell us what you would do if you were, what are your thoughts on, the balance between conservation and provision of, digital media in terms of national museums and, those sorts of things. Yeah. Find us also basically everywhere you listen to our podcast. iTunes, Spotify, Google Play Music, TuneIn, Stitcher. If you want to have our podcast on a different platform that you probably listen to other podcasts on, let us know. And if we're not already on there, we'll do our best to get us on there. Find us on Twitter and Instagram as Great Mates Podcast, GR8M8SPODCAST. And don't forget, we will be doing more episodes on Spoilers for Days coming soon, later this year. When we get the rest of Great Mates on, especially for things like Bonding, Good Place Season 4, which is definitely coming out the end of this year. Kim's Convenience, Seasons 1, 2, and 3. Send us questions. And, I don't know, what else is there? There's plenty of other stuff that'll be coming out, on that channel and potentially on Let's Get Deeper. But, for this one, as we've mentioned previously, our 100th episode and our 2nd year anniversary episodes are coming up very soon. So, we might have something planned. I can't tell you anything more than that. I literally cannot tell you anything more than that. But we might have something planned for that. So keep your ears peeled. And we'll see you guys on another episode. Bye.
Bye-bye.